What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again to break down yet another NASCAR race from a betting perspective, from a DFS angle. It's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? Man, last week's road course race was... it was crazy. You had Chase Elliott basically dominating from the get-go like we all expected. It was almost as if he was a lap ahead at one point of the rest of the field, only to see him falter near the end because of guys pushing him off the course and stuff like that, to see Christopher Bell get his first win. Like it was a fantastic race.
Yeah, it was also nice to not see half the field get wiped out in the first 5 laps and then a 6-hour rain delay too. That was also very, very nice.
Very true.
Yeah, we're rolling. We're rocking and rolling. We did a double dip in Daytona, obviously with the oval and then the road course. And now we're going up to Miami. We're gonna hit Homestead. We got a race this weekend. Very excited. As I mentioned, we're gonna hit our best bets. We're gonna talk some of the betting angles we're looking at. We're also gonna dip our toes into DFS. And Brian and I both cashed last week. That was good to see. We're going to try and keep it rolling again. We both hit from a betting angle and a DFS angle, so that was nice. Before I jump in, though, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are reading or hitting the little bell notifications. You know, if we go live, we're going to attempt to start doing these live in the future. Got to get that ball rolling. In the comments, let us know who your favorite outright pick is for this week. Who is winning this week at Homestead? We obviously have some people who dominate these races. We also have some new people who are looking like they might take that next step. And if you're not in the betting market, if you're more here for the DFS content, let us know who your favorite driver is below 9K. But with all that out of the way, Brian, let's jump in. Let's talk some race odds. And unlike last week, unlike the weeks before where we had 2 clear favorites and nobody else inside 10-1, we have basically 4 drivers inside 10-1 or 5. And then we have a couple more at 10-1. At the top of the board, who garners your interest? Where do you think you may be diving in from a betting angle?
So immediately for me, the guy who jumped out for me is Kevin Harvick, who has quietly started the year. I mean, pretty damn good. He's finished 4th at the 500 and 6th in the road course. And really, nobody's really talking about the guy that was the cream of the crop last year in 2020. And, you know, coming as like second co-favorite with Chase Elliott here, getting a 4th place start. I think he's a guy that I'll be looking at really heavily.
I'm going to jump in right there because I'm 100% on board with that. The fact that he has the 3rd longest odds is kind of interesting, I guess, tied for 2nd. But this is a guy who dominates these races, has 40 starts in tracks like Homestead. So I have my grouping set up this week. With Homestead, I have Bristol, Vegas, and Darlington as my 4. For similar track types, it gives me a bigger sample size for kind of breaking down these races. He's also finished in the top 5 in 22 of his 40 races. Over 50% of the time, he's finishing in that top 5. If you give me a guy who's going to be in the conversation come the end of the race, even at 6-1, I know traditionally we don't like betting that short a number, but when it comes to NASCAR, especially at tracks where there's somebody who's so dominant, it's good to dip your toe in the water at that price. And the fact that he's the 3rd longest odds, it just cements it even more for me.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that, like you said, I mean, looking at the numbers that you have accumulated here, I mean, 55% of the times at races that are very similar to this track, he's finishing in the top 5, which is almost an unheard of number here. And he's got eight wins to the next closest is 5 with Kyle Busch, Hamlin, and Brad Keselowski at similar tracks. So this is a guy who drives really well at places like this, who, like you said, pretty much third best odds, is a great pick to potentially steal the win from the 4th spot. There's a little bit of a tidbit that I found while researching this track in particular that I found extremely interesting, very similar to the Daytona 500. 7 of the last 8 winners at Miami have started the race 5th or better. Now, that's kind of crazy. And the only outlier there was Jimmy Johnson in 2016. He started the race at 14th position. Going even further here, in the 22 historical races, 14 of those started 5th or better, and only 2 times has somebody started worse than 15th won this race. So you're looking at or near the top 15 or top third of the field here for a potential winner. Or you're really testing Vegas if picking somebody that's starting further back than that.
That's really impressive and really interesting. And, time to evaluate those picks, because, when we're looking at the top of the board, we're talking about Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, Kevin Harvick, the aforementioned, Kurt Busch. That's your top 5. Keselowski in 7, Truex in 9. I will really want to talk about Mr. Kyle Busch, who absolutely dominates this track, and has been running well since the season got underway. Obviously, has he won the Clash, and then he was 4th at Daytona. Wait, what is that? That must have been something else, because he was 14th at Daytona, right?
Yeah.
Because he got in the accident, and then he obviously had a bad run last week. But from an overall perspective, like, this guy, 39 races at these kind of tracks, 5 wins, 17 top 5s. His number is really interesting, but do we have to be like? How aggressive do we want to be when it comes to, staying to statistics? Because that 10-1 number is really nice.
Yep.
But if, history tells us that people who start as far back as he will be starting, don't tend to win these races. That is incredibly interesting to me.
Yeah, when I saw that statistic, I found that really interesting, because it's almost as if guys that start from the beginning, they're just able to kind of pull away, because in the middle of the pack here, you're probably going to have some guys where, like we see it this week with, names like Justin Haley, Daniel Suarez, Corey LaJoie starting in like the late teens, early 20 spots, which their cars are not going to be as fast as the rest of the higher price guys, like a Kyle Busch, who's starting at the rear here. So maybe they hold up the back end of the pack, and the front end is just able to pull away from the pack early on and, create that distance here.
We saw that at Daytona, right? Where they did the restart, and Hamlin kind of got screwed by that and ended up not being able to keep up with the pack. Now, I will say these are different times, and we're not qualifying. We're not setting the field based upon speed. So maybe obviously a lot of those races were based on, okay, the fast drivers were in the front, so the fast drivers are going to run away with the track. It will be interesting to see kind of if we can, and maybe that's something where you go, okay, Kyle Busch is starting 24th. Maybe you look at, say, a top 3 or a top 10, or look at that top 5 market and see if you can't find value there, as a way to kind of supplement, even if you want to take a shot on the outright, supplement that bet. That way, if he doesn't win but gets top 3, then you're able to kind of recoup some of that investment.
Yeah, so I think just kind of figuring out those numbers and the trends at this track, it does make betting this particular race a little more intriguing, because if you can find a guy who's starting near the top, third of the field, top quarter of the field, with a double digit odds, like a Logano or a Keselowski, they probably offer better potential than even a Kyle Busch, who does race really well here, but you're taking the chance that he's going to be only the 3rd guy since the implementation of this race to the circuit to win starting worse than 15th.
So outside of that, beyond, so basically 10-1 and beyond, is there somebody that you're more interested in? Is there somebody that you're gravitating towards in the betting market?
Probably not so much for an outright, but I mean, just looking at the numbers, I was looking at like last 10, last 5, all that kind of stuff. I mean, Tyler Reddick, his only race here, he ran really well. I mean, he'll be mentioned here shortly. Both guys like Alex Bowman and William Byron, they both offer good potential starting from the back of the field, but they're two young drivers who drive really well, who haven't got out to the greatest starts here. So I think that's kind of indicative of where their numbers are. So them as like a top 10 potential, I think offer good value. And then our buddy Eric Almarola, all the way with the steepest odds here, at 40-1 to win this race. He's another guy who he hasn't had like the worst racing at this particular track. For him again as a top 10 odds, or if you really want to get risky, top 3, you're looking at 10-1. I mean, this will be really interesting to see. I probably won't be betting very much on the winner here. I'll be definitely looking at more top 3s, top 5s.
Yeah, I like that philosophy. I will say that there is 2 drivers, and Harvick would be one for me as my outright, and then I kind of like Logano based upon the numbers, based upon where he'll be starting, because he's a guy that has started in the front before. Last year, he obviously started second, which is where he'll be starting this year. Had a wreck at the end. Basically finished 27th, so that's not what you're looking for. But the years before, he started 5th, finished 5th, started 5th, finished 1st, started 19th, finished 6th. So it's a guy that runs really well at this track, has moved up almost every year, and I think at the 10-1 odds, based upon where he's starting, based upon his history, makes a ton of sense. So if we are dipping, we're looking at top 3s, top 5s. Let's dip down even further and find value there. Who garners your interest? Where you looking as potential, longer shots that could cash some decent numbers with the 3s and the 5s and the 10s?
So, like, a guy that I really like is William Byron. He'll be mentioned further in my DFS thing here, but I mean, he's a guy who last year he came on really strong. He was in the playoffs. I think he made the final 8, maybe if I'm not mistaken, he got close to the final 4. His first 2 races of the year have been atrocious, with 26th and 31st place finishes here to begin the year. But this is a guy, he finished 9th at this track last year, so he has success here. He's driving for a fantastic team. I just think at these kind of odds, they're not going to be this he's not going to be this big of a long shot going forward as as he starts to trend upward throughout this season. So I think this is the opportunity to get these guys like a Byron, a Bowman, or even an Almarola sitting at the back end of this particular group here, because once they get into a groove and they start hitting tracks that they're more familiar with, you're going to see their odds creep more into like the teens, where like a Keselowski and a Blaney are currently.
Right. And I think that's, way to take advantage. Even like, like the Christopher Bell last week, I think was in a good spot, where some of these younger drivers that aren't really getting the respect that maybe they deserve, are going to start garnering that as it rolls along. And I think the betting market will take advantage of that. Okay. Anything else from a betting perspective, or maybe drivers you're looking at for head-to-heads, for maybe group finishes? Anybody that you're like, I don't really love them for a top 3, but I think they have the ability. And obviously we're going to jump into our DFS names, so I think that could help kind of get into that groove as well. But anyone else from a purely betting standpoint before we hop over?
Yeah, so one of the guys I really like in a group setting would be Matt DiBenedetto, going up against let's see, he's going up against Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, and Cole Custer. I think he has the longest shot to finish that group as the highest place finisher. And, he doesn't have the greatest success here. His average finish is 20th over the last 3, but in the 3 races that he has here, his first finish was 26th, his second finish was 20th, and then last year it was 14th. So, I mean, if we're following the trends here, I'm going to jump on the train, even with a pretty steep starting position for this race at 37th. I think he has the opportunity to move up and finish ahead of all 3 of those guys at the end of the day.
I like that call. I think that makes a lot of sense. I was actually looking at D Vendetto as a guy who could move up. And I think, jumping on him in head-to-heads, jumping on him in groups could make a lot of sense. I think doing the same with Tyler Reddick is going to make a lot of sense. And, I'll talk about him from a DraftKings perspective. Obviously, he's only ran the one race, so it's hard to get super duper excited about what he can be. Bear with me real quick. But he had an amazing run here last year, started 24th, finished 4th, even led a few laps. I think he's starting in the back. So he's starting 30th, and that's why, or 35th rather. So that's why from a DraftKings perspective, as we kind of transfer over there, you can see he is a part of my core, but I like some of the betting odds for him this week. And I know, you're looking at 22-1 for a guy who's finished starting 35th. And you don't really love that. But plus 550 to finish in the top 3. Is the top 5 odds listed? No, I don't think they are yet. Okay, so they haven't been listed on DraftKings. But, if you can get, what's he's minus 125 for a top 10. So yeah, he's probably close to 2-1 for a top 5. I like that. I think he could make a similar run as he did last year and get closer to that position. And as we shift our focus to DraftKings, you're getting a guy who's starting in 35th, has, amazing run in his first run. Now that could have been a fluke. He could do terribly this year and not matter, but for a guy that has top 10, top 5 type upside starting 35th, that's a lot of placement points. That's a lot of potential to be even leading a few laps. And at 8,500, I think makes a ton of sense. Kyle Busch, another person that I am going to be in on, starting 24th, a tremendous run of history at this track, has done really well. Now you're going to have to pay up for him. So 11.8 is kind of what you're looking at from a price tag standpoint, but I think he'll be worth it. Now you can obviously pivot off him and find some other values, but for a driver who has the success, who has done as well, and is starting as far back, I just don't know that you're going to be able to better that. So looking at that makes a ton of sense. I also like going to Kyle Larson. I know he didn't run last year, but he has had success at this track. It will be interesting to see how he does. I'm kind of interested to see what kind of run some of these guys, because as you can see, Eric Jones at 6,900, another guy I like, another driver in a new car. I'm not, you're taking a little bit of a risk with some of these guys because they're in new cars. Bubba Wallace hasn't traditionally done great at this track, so he took Bubba Wallace's old ride. We'll see how it goes. But I think both of them, I feel like a lot more, there's some tracks where you need to have the cars, but you need to also have a feel for different types of track, and with one that is elevated like this, knowing how to approach the turns, how to accelerate out of the turns, that kind of stuff I think matters a lot. So those are the 4 names that I am going to be looking at from a DFS perspective to kind of start my lineups. Brian, let's shift over and talk about the names that you're targeting, and obviously have Kyle Larson at the top as well.
Yeah, Kyle Larson was a guy who came to my attention earlier in the week when you shared something from NASCAR.com that was talking about the average green flag speed here at Homestead, and Kyle Larson led that list of guys at 161 miles per hour, which was a full mile per hour faster than the next guy, who happens to be somebody on your list, Tyler Reddick, who ran at 160.6. So I think both of those guys make a ton of sense, especially like Larson, for instance, as being the highest priced guy on my list, mainly because of his starting position. I mean, he's starting 17th. He has the 4th best odds here to win the race from the 17th position. So this is a guy or the 5th best odds at 8-1, who, the experts think has a legit shot to win this race, even starting near the middle of the field. So that's why I have him near the top there. Kevin Harvick, I already talked about him. I just think he's an absolute stud that nobody's really talking about. And at 10,000, I'm paying up for two guys here, but as the guy who I think is my favorite to win the race, I got to have him in my lineup. And then, like I talked about with William Byron at 9,100, I'm taking a little bit of a chance, but with that 31st starting position, like you were talking about with a Reddick, he's got plenty of opportunity for those movement spots. And, a ninth place finisher last year, I think he's got good potential to finish in the top 10. And then my last guy here, Austin Dillon, who he's got 2 consecutive top 8 finishes at this track, and the race prior to that was 11th. So, I mean, if I'm taking that into average, I'm looking at a top 10 finish for 7,700 with a guy who's starting 22nd. So again, multiple, double-digit movement spots and the potential at a top 10 finish is a guy that I'm going to pay up for. And, it's going to be difficult to fill out the rest of my lineup here, but there's guys like Ryan Preece, who starting top 10, who's ran decently well here. I may take another shot at Daniel Suarez starting at 21st to even maintain his position. But yeah, this will be one of the few races where I'm willing to pay up for 3 guys.
Yeah.
And then kind of, just pick guys starting at the back end for movement spots for like value points at the back end.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll start most of my lineups with either Busch or Larson. I don't know that getting them together will be super doable. I can do it, but that means kind of basically skipping past Tyler Reddick and starting with some Eric Jones and some Austin Dillon and those kind of names in my lineup, which I might do. I might go with a couple studs at the top and kind of work in some cheaper guys. But yeah, I think one of the Kyles will be my horse, and then kind of build in around there. So obviously, if I go Busch, then I'm spending a little more initially, but so much like those extra placement points I think mean a huge difference. And if I do something like Busch, Reddick, Jones, and Austin Dillon, that still gives me 7,500 for my last 2 spots, so I can spend up a little bit more, spend down a little bit more, and make my lineups work. Brian, it's time right about that time. What is your best bet for the Dixie Vodka 400 at Homestead?
Well, I'm going to be taking lots of shots here, so let's go Kevin Harvick to win the damn race at 5-1. Let's effing go. Third race in, and I'm predicting the winner.
I'm really scared, Brian. Brian, you want to know what my best bet is?
Oh, no.
Kevin Harvick to win the damn race at 6-1.
No!
So don't bet on Kevin Harvick.
That's just not good, folks. Let's just we did not talk about this prior to the show, by the way.
We either do really well when we both are on the same best bet, or we do really horribly. So maybe we'll both cash and maybe everything will be good. Like I said, I do like Joey Logano a lot at 10-1 as well. So I probably will take a shot there as well. But yeah, I like Kevin Harvick. I think he's in a prime spot, and he was so damn dominant last year. I think he's ready to pick it up right where he left off. Obviously,
and it's not like he has it. I mean,
no, he's been doing really well, and obviously, the season didn't finish the way he expected, so he's going to put himself in position to finish what he started last year and hoist that trophy come season's end. So yeah, I think it's Kevin Harvick's world, and we're just living in it. Yeah. So and that's the other thing. So like from a DFS perspective, like I really want to go to Harvick, especially because that person tends to lead so much. But 10,100 for a guy that doesn't have a lot of placement points, you get the dominator points. And Brian and I both think he can win, so that's a good thing. But if I put him in my lineup, that brings me down to like Timmy Hill or Garrett Smithley or BJ McLeod, and that might be a bridge too far. So
those guys sound like creative players on backyard baseball, not even like a real baseball game.
Yeah. I mean, I could take Kyle Busch, put the other Kyle in, and then get to a point where I actually feel 6,100. I could do something with that. My Ryan Preece, as you mentioned, Daniel Suarez, Alfredo Pasta, Corey LaJoie. Quinn Houff, there's you get if you take Quinn Houff, he finishes 20th, 25th. You still get
You're-
all those placement
Yep.
points, plus you're wheeling and dealing with all the other spots. So don't hate it quite as much. All right, Brian. Good luck to us. Good luck to Kevin Harvick. Good luck with your
Please.
DFS, with your betting. As I mentioned, if you in the comments, let us know who you think is going to win, and let us know your favorite DK play below 9K. So 8,000 something and below. Let us know who you like. We'll share some of the. If you guys hit some winners, we'll share them next week on the pod. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert. We'll talk to y'all next time.